World Trade Organization. Regime for the importation, sale, and distribution of bananas. Complaint: Ecuador, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, and United States. Respondent: European Community. The European communities and Ecuador, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, and the United States appeal from certain issues of law and legal interpretations in the panel reports. European communities, regime for the importation, sale, and distribution of bananas. In February 1996, Ecuador, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, and the United States filed a legal complaint against the European Union's banana import regime, which had been in force since July 1993, claiming that it has unfairly restricted the entry of their bananas to the European community. In September 1997, the WTO ruled the European Union's banana import regime was inconsistent with the WTO rules for the following reasons. The European Union's tariff quota allocation, particularly to the ACP countries, was contrary to the non-discrimination rule. The Europeans' licensing procedures, which involve the purchase of European and/or ACP bananas in order to obtain rights to import some Latin American bananas, were contrary to the MFN rule and the national treatment rule. Also, through the impact of the licensing system on the service suppliers of the complaining countries. The licensing procedures were also contrary to the MFN rule and the national treatment rule, Article 2 and 17 of the General Agreements on Trades and Services (GATT). In January 1999, the European Union introduced a new banana import regime, but the World Trade Organization ruled in April 1999 that this new regime was also incompatible with the European Union's World Trade Organization obligations. The appellate body upheld the panel's finding that the allocation of country tariff quota shares to some members not having a substantial interest in supplying bananas, but not to others, which was inconsistent with Article 13.1. The appellate body also agreed with the panel that the BFA tariff quota relocation, under which a portion of a tariff quota share not used by one BFA country could be relocated exclusively to other BFA countries, were inconsistent with Article 13. Now let's talk about the arguments of the participants, the European Community as appellant. According to the European Communities, treaty law is a method of contracting out of general international law. Therefore, the WTO agreement must contain a rejection of the requirement of legal interest or an acceptance of the notion of actio popularis, in order to conclude that the WTO dispute settlement system sets aside the requirement of a legal interest. The European Communities maintains that the reasoning advanced by the panel that all the parties to a treaty have an interest in its observation is a general observation which is true for all the treaties. Now let's talk about country allocations. The complaining parties submit that a panel correctly found the two regimes' arguments of the European Communities to be relevant for the WTO purposes. The complaining parties argue that nothing in the text of Article 13 of the GATT 1994 suggests that the obligation concerning restrictions and shares of trade or imports can be avoided by creating legal formalities, such as separate regimes for administrative or other reasons. The complaining parties argue further that the insistence of the European Community that it has only one tariff quota concerning bananas is neither legally relevant nor factually correct. Article 13 of the GATT 1994 clearly does not distinguish between quota allocations reflected in a schedule and those that are not.
Created using Powtoon.